The meeting room was huge, big enough to hold delegates from 50 different worlds. Ambassador Hyan Wu sat in the human section, watching alien species argue about trade routes and mining rights. He had been to hundreds of these meetings. Most were boring. Today felt different. The air suddenly changed. Emergency lights flashed red across the council chamber. A new ship had arrived outside the station. The security officer, a tall blue alien with 4 arms, announced that an urgent delegation was requesting immediate audience. Hyan Wu watched as the chamber doors opened. A being made of living crystal walked in. Its body sparkled under the lights, but there was something wrong. Cracks ran through its surface. This creature was hurt, maybe dying. "I am Vecmer of the Karathi hegemony," the crystal being said. Its voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "I come with terrible news. The Devourers have returned." The chamber went silent. Even the most talkative delegates stopped speaking. Hyan Wu had read about the Devourers in old history files. They were supposed to be legends, stories told to scare children. "Impossible," said Zithara, the Vel Consortium representative. She was a tall, thin alien with purple skin and large, black eyes. Her species could read minds. "The Devourers died out 1,000 years ago." Vecmer's crystal body flashed with pain. 3 of our worlds are gone, completely gone. They ate everything. The planets, the moons, even the space stations. Nothing is left but empty space. Hyan Wu leaned forward. He had studied military history his whole life. The Devourers were not legends. They were real. They had destroyed the Ascendant Empire, the most powerful civilization the galaxy had ever known. Then they had vanished. "How many ships?" asked the Keth Empire's war leader, a massive creature covered in metal armor. "We don't know," Vecmer replied. "Our scouts never came back. But we saw them on long-range sensors before our colonies went dark. Hundreds of ships, maybe thousands. They're coming toward our core worlds." The chamber erupted in worried voices. Every species started talking at once. Some demanded proof. Others wanted to know why the Karathi hadn't asked for help sooner. A few simply said it wasn't their problem. Hyan Wu listened to them argue. He watched Vecmer's crystal body grow dimmer as hope faded from the alien's face. The Karathi had come here for help. Instead, they were getting politics. "What do you need?" asked the Altair Federation's admiral. "Ships," Vecmer said simply. "Weapons, soldiers, anything you can spare. We have perhaps 2 weeks before they reach our home system." The excuses started immediately. The Keth Empire was fighting rebels in the Outer Rim. They couldn't spare any ships. The Veil Consortium claimed their fleet was protecting trade routes. Too important to risk. The Altair Federation offered to send 3 old cruisers. 3 ships against an enemy that had eaten entire star systems. Each excuse made Vecmer's light grow dimmer. The crystal being's voice became weaker. "Please, we are not asking you to fight our war. We just need help to evacuate our people. Children, families, anyone you can save." Even that was too much to ask. The evacuation ships would be too slow, too vulnerable. The insurance costs would be enormous. The political complications could last for decades. Hyan Wu had heard enough. He stood up from his chair. The chamber was so large that his voice had to be amplified by speakers. "The Terran Federation accepts your request for aid," he said clearly. The chamber went quiet again. Then the laughter started. Not mean laughter, but the kind people make when they hear something silly. Humans were known as good diplomats and decent traders, but their military was tiny compared to the major powers. Zithara was the first to speak. "Ambassador Hyan Wu, your offer is noble, but the human fleet has maybe 200 ships. The Devourers destroyed the Ascendant Empire. That was 10,000 ships with technology you can't even imagine. We appreciate the gesture, added the Keth war leader. But this is not a fight humans can win. Hyan Wu looked at Thekmer. The crystal being's light was almost gone, completely defeated. Then Hyan Wu looked around the chamber at all these powerful species. Species with huge fleets and advanced weapons. Species too afraid or too selfish to help. You don't understand, Hyan Wu said calmly. We're not sending our fleet to fight your war. We're sending our fleet to end this threat permanently. More laughter. This time it was louder. The idea that humans could do what the mighty Ascendant Empire could not was absurd. Zethara's black eyes sparkled with amusement. End the threat? Ambassador, your entire navy couldn't challenge a single Devourer scout ship. What makes you think human ships can succeed where legends have failed? Hyan Wu's expression didn't change. He looked at each delegate in turn. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but somehow felt dangerous. You clearly don't understand what humanity considers help. Something in his tone made the laughter stop. For just a moment, the chamber felt cold. Hyan Wu turned to Thekmer. We will send ships to your home system. Hold your positions as long as you can. Help is coming. The crystal being's light flared brighter. Thank you. Even if it doesn't work, thank you for trying. It will work, Hyan Wu said simply. The meeting continued, but no one was really listening anymore. The other delegates whispered among themselves about the foolish humans who thought they could fight an ancient enemy. Some felt sorry for the waste of human lives. Others were already planning how to divide up human territory after the fleet was destroyed. When the session ended, Hyan Wu didn't stay to chat with other diplomats like usual. He went straight to his private communication room. The message he sent was short and used codes that would mean nothing to anyone listening. Execute Protocol Omega. Authorization. Ambassador 77 Alpha. Message ends. They asked for help. He sent the message toward Earth and sat back in his chair. Around him, the space station continued its normal routine. Alien diplomats made deals and argued about trade agreements. Security ships patrolled the area with their regular patrols. None of them knew that everything was about to change. The galaxy was about to learn what humans really meant when they offered help, and it was going to be more terrifying than anything the Devourers had ever done. Admiral Day Hyan was drinking coffee when the message arrived. He was standing in Luna Command Center, looking out at Earth through the massive windows. The blue planet looked peaceful from here. Beautiful. Nothing like the military fortress it really was. His assistant handed him the coded message. Hyan read it twice, then set down his coffee cup. His hands were steady, but his mind was racing. Protocol Omega. He had hoped this day would never come. Sound General Alert, he told his assistant. All department heads to conference room. Alpha, Priority 1. The Luna Command Center transformed in minutes. Quiet hallways filled with running personnel. Computer screens that had shown peaceful star charts now displayed weapon inventories and fleet positions. Hidden panels opened in walls, revealing communication arrays that officially didn't exist. Day Hyan walked through corridors that few humans had ever seen. These were the real command levels, buried deep inside Luna's core. The public levels above were for show. Down here was where humanity's true military lived. Conference Room Alpha was carved out of solid rock. No windows, no decorations. Just a table, chairs, and screens showing information that could start or end wars. 3 people were already waiting when Day Hyan arrived. General Mi-young sat at the far end of the table. She was small and quiet. The kind of person most people forgot was in the room. That was perfect for someone who ran humanity's intelligence networks. She knew secrets that could topple governments across the galaxy. Dr. Jamin was studying data on his personal tablet. He looked like a university professor, which he had been before joining the military. Now he designed weapons that made other humans nervous. His research projects had names like Reality Breach and Entropy Cannon. Captain Unji stood by the wall screens, watching fleet movements. She was young for a ship captain, but she piloted the most dangerous vessel humans had ever built. The Ragnarok was her ship, and sometimes Daehyun wondered if she was the only person crazy enough to fly it. "The Devourers are back," Daehyun said without introduction. "Ambassador Hyan Wu has committed us to helping the Karathi." The other galactic powers refused. Mi-young looked up from her files. "How long do we have?" 2 weeks until they reach the Karathi home system. Maybe less. Jamin set down his tablet. "That's not much time to prepare." "We've been preparing for 300 years, Daehyun replied. "Ever since we learned about the Devourers from the old Ascendant archives. While other species forgot or ignored the threat, we studied it. The wall screens changed to show historical data, ancient battle reports, Devourer ship designs, tactical analyses that humanity had spent centuries perfecting. Other species saw the Devourers as unstoppable legends. Humans saw them as a problem that needed solving. What's our fleet status?" Daehyun asked. Eung answered without looking at notes. "Extinction fleet is ready. 15 Leviathan-class dreadnoughts, 30 Wraith-class stealth destroyers, 8 Titan-class carriers with full fighter complements. Support vessels are standing by at hidden bases across 7 systems. Crew readiness? All personnel have been training for Devourer scenarios since basic training. Every captain knows the mission parameters. Every weapons officer has practiced with the special ammunition." Daehyun nodded. This was what separated humans from other species. When the galaxy's major powers built fleets, they built them to fight each other. Humans built their secret fleet to fight things that shouldn't exist. Mi-young activated her screens. "Intelligence assets are in position. We have sleeper agents near every known Devourer travel route. When their main fleet moves, we'll know about it before they do. Sabotage operations? Ready to deploy. Devourer supply lines will start having accidents as soon as you give the word. Their logistics network will collapse within days." Dr. Jamin pulled up weapon specifications. "All special systems are online. Temporal mines are armed and ready. Quantum virus packages have been loaded into torpedo warheads. Reality anchors have been tested and approved. What about the Ragnarok?" Daehyun asked Eun-G. Her smile was not entirely sane. "Phase shift engines are stable. Dimensional weapons are charged. My crew is ready to do impossible things." The 4 military leaders looked at each other across the table. They had planned for this moment for decades. Humanity's greatest secret was about to be revealed. The galaxy thought humans were peaceful, traitors and diplomats. They were about to learn the truth. The other species refused to help. Daehyun said slowly. "They laughed at our offer. They think we're sending 200 outdated ships to die gloriously." "How many ships are we actually sending?" asked Jamin. "All of them." The room went quiet. The extinction fleet was humanity's most closely guarded secret. Ships built in hidden shipyards, using technology that officially didn't exist. Weapons that violated every galactic treaty humans had ever signed. Crews trained to fight enemies that most species believed were myths. Mi-young spoke first. "Admiral, once we deploy the extinction fleet, there's no hiding what we really are. The galaxy will know that humans have been lying about our capabilities for centuries." "Good," Daehyun replied. "I'm tired of pretending to be harmless." Eun-G stepped forward. "Sir, the Ragnarok's weapon systems Some of them haven't been fully tested. We're not sure what the side effects might be. The Devourers eat civilizations. Daehyun said flatly, I'm willing to risk side effects. Dr. Jamin raised his hand. Admiral, some of our weapons. They're designed to prevent enemies from existing. Not just kill them. Actually remove them from reality. Are we sure we want to cross that line? Daehyun stood up and walked to the window showing Earth, his home planet. The world that had created him and billions of other humans. The species that everyone underestimated. Doctor, 300 years ago, our ancestors looked at the galaxy and saw civilizations that could destroy us without thinking about it. So we became something they couldn't destroy. We built weapons that scare us. We trained soldiers who think in ways that disturb us. We created a military that other humans are afraid of. He turned back to face his officers. The Korathi asked for help. Every major power in the galaxy turned them away. So now they get to see what human help looks like. The orders went out within an hour. Across human space, hidden bases came alive. Ships that didn't appear on any official records powered up their engines. Crews that officially didn't exist reported to duty stations. The extinction fleet began to move dot in the Centauri shipyards. Massive dreadnoughts undocked from secret construction. Bays, their hulls were black metal that absorbed light and sensor scans. Their weapons could crack planets dot near Alpha Centauri. Stealth destroyers activated cloaking systems that bent space around them. They became invisible to every known detection method. Ghost ships with crews that specialized in appearing where enemies least expected them dot at the edge of the solar system. Carrier ships launched fighters with no human pilots. Artificial intelligences that thought 1,000,000 times faster than biological minds. Each fighter was smarter than most species' battle computers dot, and in Earth orbit, the Ragnarok prepared for its first combat mission. Captain Yoonji ran final. System checks on weapons that made her nervous. Engines that could fold space. Cannons that fired concentrated physics instead of energy. Admiral Daehyun recorded a message for the Korathi. This is Admiral Daehyun of the Terran Extinction Fleet. Help is on the way. Survive until we arrive. Message ends. As the fleet entered hyperspace, their combined energy signature was massive, so large that every sensor array in the galaxy detected it. Space observatories from a dozen species recorded the readings and tried to understand what they meant. On the Vel Consortium home world, Zithara stared at the energy readings in disbelief. The numbers didn't make sense. No fleet could generate that much power. Not unless ... her black eyes went wide with understanding. The humans hadn't been lying when they said they would end the threat. They had been promising. Vekmer stood on the command bridge of the Korathi defense station, watching his people die. The crystal being's light had grown dim over the past 3 days. The Devourers had arrived early, and everything was going wrong. The Korathi fleet had been brave. 60 ships against an enemy at 8 star systems. They had fought with everything they had. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, even ramming attacks when their weapons failed. Nothing worked. The Devourer ships were massive biomechanical monsters. They looked like they had grown instead of being built. Dark metal mixed with organic tissue. Weapons that pulsed like heartbeats. When they were damaged, they healed themselves by eating nearby space debris. Sir, we've lost the outer defense. Line, reported Commander Velhar, another crystal being whose light flickered with fear. The Devourers are adapting to our weapons faster than we can modify them. Vekmer watched another Korathi cruiser explode on the main screen. The Devourer ship that had killed it immediately extended feeding tubes and began consuming the wreckage. Metal, energy, even the bodies of the crew. Everything became fuel for the enemy war machine. How long until they reached the planet? Vekmer asked. 6 hours at current speed. 6 hours. Vecmur's people had survived for thousands of years. They had built a peaceful civilization based on trade and knowledge. In 6 hours, they would be nothing but raw materials for creatures that knew only hunger. "Sir," called the sensor operator, "we're detecting massive energy signatures approaching. The system. Something's coming out of hyperspace." Vecmur felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe one of the galactic powers had changed their mind. Maybe help was coming after all. The space near the edge of the system began to twist. Reality bent like heated metal. Then it tore open, and ships poured through. But these weren't normal hyperspace exits. The human fleet didn't emerge from hyperspace. They arrived, forcing their way into normal space through tears in reality itself. "By the crystal light," whispered Velhar. "What are those ships?" Vecmur stared at the sensor readings. The human vessels were unlike anything he had ever seen. Black ships that seemed to absorb light. Vessels that flickered in and out of existence. And in the center, something massive that hurt to look at directly. The lead Devourer ship, a creature the size of a small moon, turned toward the new arrivals. Its biomechanical voice echoed across all communication frequencies. "Unknown vessels, you have entered a feeding zone. Withdraw immediately or be consumed." The response came from a human ship. The voice was calm, almost bored. "This is Admiral Dehyan of the Terran Extinction Fleet. You are in violation of galactic law. Surrender immediately." The Devourer ship's laughter sounded like metal tearing. "Humans, we remember your species. Weak, soft. You will provide adequate protein for our war effort." "You're thinking of someone else," Admiral Dehyan replied. "We're the humans who end things." What happened next wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration of what human warfare actually looked like. The Ragnarok fired first. Captain Yunji's ship didn't use normal weapons. It fired concentrated physics. Space around the nearest Devourer vessel twisted into impossible shapes. The enemy ship didn't explode. It turned inside out, then ceased to exist entirely. The Wraith-class destroyers attacked next. They didn't fly toward the enemy. They simply appeared inside the Devourer formation, having phased through dimensions that normal ships couldn't enter. Their weapons fired from impossible angles, striking targets that should have been protected by shields and armor. The Leviathan. Dreadnoughts opened fire with weapons that violated the basic laws of reality. They didn't shoot at the Devourer ships. They shot at the space around them, creating gravity wells that crushed targets like tin cans. One shot created a miniature black hole that lasted just long enough to devour 3 enemy vessels. Vecmur watched in amazement as Devourer ships tried to adapt to human weapons. It was their greatest strength. They could analyze any attack and develop defenses within minutes. But the human weapons kept changing. Energy beams became particle streams. Particle streams became temporal distortions. Every time the Devourers adapted, the humans switched to something completely different. "Sir," Velhar said in wonder. "They. Devourers are retreating?" It was true. For the first time in recorded history, Devourer ships were pulling back from a fight. Their biomechanical hulls showed something that no one had ever seen before. Fear, the largest Devourer ship, one that commanded their fleet, broadcast on all frequencies again. But this time its voice was different, uncertain, impossible. "Our analysis shows you are baseline humans, weak biological forms with primitive technology. How are you doing this?" Admiral Dehyan's response was patient, like a teacher explaining something simple. "You're looking at our old data. We've made some improvements." A human carrier launched its fighters. But these weren't normal combat craft. They moved with perfect coordination, thinking faster than any biological mind could follow. Each fighter was controlled by an artificial intelligence that could process information in MICROSEC, ONDS. The AI fighters swarmed through the Devourer formation like angry insects. They were too small for the big weapons to target, too fast for point defense systems to track. They fired weapons that seemed to randomize the target's molecular structure, causing enemy ships to simply fall apart. Dr. Jamin's special weapons came next. Torpedoes that aged their targets centuries and seconds. Mines that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Energy beams that convinced matter it wanted to be something else entirely. "This is impossible," the Devourer commander broadcast. "We have consumed 1,000 civilizations. We destroyed the Ascendant Empire. You cannot defeat us." "The Ascendant Empire fought you to win," Admiral Dahayan replied calmly. "We're fighting you to make sure this never happens again." The difference became clear as the battle continued. The Korathi had fought bravely, but defensively, trying to protect their world. Other species would have done the same. But the humans weren't fighting to protect anything. They were fighting to eliminate a threat permanently. Thekmer watched a human stealth ship appear inside a Devourer vessel's hull. It fired some kind of virus directly into the enemy's biomechanical systems. The Devourer ship began attacking its own allies, its corrupted mind convinced that everything around it was hostile. "Commander Thekmer," came Admiral Dahayan's voice, on a private channel, "please withdraw your remaining ships to a safe distance. We're about to deploy weapons that might affect Allied vessels." "What kind of weapons?" Thekmer asked. "The kind we hoped we'd never have to use." The Ragnarok moved toward the center of the Devourer fleet, its weapons charged with energy that made space itself glow. When it fired, reality cracked like broken glass. The weapon didn't destroy the enemy ships. It deleted them, removing them from existence so completely that the universe forgot they had ever been there. The remaining Devourer ships tried to flee, but General Myung's sabotage operations activated. Supply ships that had been waiting light years away suddenly exploded. Jump coordinates became corrupted. Devourer vessels found themselves arriving in empty space or inside asteroid fields. In less than 2 hours, the Devourer Vanguard fleet was completely destroyed. Not defeated, not damaged, erased. The last Devourer ship broadcast a final message before a human torpedo turned it into constituent atoms. "What are you?" Admiral Dahayan's answer was simple. "We're the species that other species call when the universe needs protecting." Thekmer's crystal body flared with light as hope returned. His people were safe. The humans had done the impossible. But as he watched the human fleet reorganize, he realized something that made his light flicker with new fear. The humans weren't finished. They were preparing for something bigger. "Admiral," Thekmer broadcast, "thank you. Our people are saved." "Not yet," came the reply. "This was just their advance force. The main Devourer fleet is still coming. Don't worry. We're going to meet them halfway." Thekmer watched the human ships prepare to leave. They had saved his world, but he understood now that they hadn't come here to fight a defensive battle. They had come to start a war, and from what he had just witnessed, it was going to be the last war the Devourers ever fought. The main Devourer fleet arrived like a plague of metal and flesh. Admiral Dahayan stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching enemy ships emerge from hyperspace. Not dozens or hundreds. Thousands. Some were the size of cities. Others looked like artificial planets with weapons attached. "Fleet status report," he ordered. "All ships ready, Admiral," replied his tactical officer. "Extinction Fleet is at full combat readiness. Special weapons are armed and standing by." Dahayan nodded. The human fleet looked tiny compared to the enemy armada. 50 ships against thousands. But numbers meant nothing when you had weapons that rewrote reality. "Sir," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the Devourer Fleet Commander." "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was ancient and terrible. It sounded like the death of stars. "I am Hive Prime, consciousness of the Eternal Fleet. You destroyed our advance forces. Impressive for such a primitive species. And now you face the true power of the Devourers. Surrender and your deaths will be quick." Admiral De Hyon studied the sensor readings. The enemy fleet was massive, but it was also everything the Devourers had. Their entire civilization was here, concentrated in one place. "Perfect. Hive Prime," he replied calmly. "This is Admiral De Hyon. I'm going to give you one chance to turn around and leave this galaxy forever." The alien laughter that came through. The speaker sounded like breaking bones. "You threaten us? Your entire species has fewer ships than we lose in a minor skirmish. What could you possibly do to harm us? We're about to show you." The war began with General Myung's intelligence. Operations. Across multiple star systems, Devourer supply bases suddenly went silent. Ships that had been waiting to refuel found their fuel dumps exploded. Backup fleets discovered their navigation computers had been reprogrammed to send them into suns. But that was just the beginning. Dr. J. Min's research division deployed weapons that shouldn't exist. Temporal mines aged entire Devourer squadrons to dust in seconds. Quantum viruses spread through their biomechanical systems, causing ships to forget how to function. Reality anchors prevented the enemy from adapting to new threats by locking them into specific states of existence. Captain Yunji led the Ragnarok in attacks that defied physics. Her ship would appear inside enemy formations, fire weapons that turned space inside out, then vanish before the Devourers could respond. Each attack left enemy vessels scattered across multiple dimensions. Vecmer watched from his command station in Karathi space. The crystal being had volunteered to serve as liaison between the human fleet and Karathi resistance forces. What he saw changed his understanding of warfare forever. Other species built weapons to destroy enemies. Humans built weapons to prevent enemies from existing. "Commander Vecmer," came Admiral De Hyon's voice over the communication system. "We're about to deploy Phase 2 operations. You might want to record this for your historians." "What is Phase 2? Vecmer asked. "Total warfare." The human fleet split into groups and began attacking from impossible directions. Some ships approached through normal space. Others phased through dimensions that didn't have names. The Wraith destroyers attacked from inside the enemy formation, having somehow bypassed all defenses. But the most terrifying part was watching the Devourer fleet react. For the first time in their existence, they were afraid. "Impossible," broadcast Hive Prime. "Our analysis shows you lack the technology for these attacks. Your weapons should not function. Your ships should not exist. You're analyzing our public technology," Admiral De Hyon replied. "We kept the good stuff secret. A Devourer bioship the size of a moon tried to ram a human dreadnought. The Leviathan didn't fire weapons. It activated something that turned the enemy vessel into mathematics, reducing a massive war machine to numbers that couldn't sustain physical existence. Across the galaxy, other species watched the battle through long-range sensors. The Vel Consortium's greatest psychics tried to understand what they were seeing. Their minds couldn't process it. Zithara stood in the Consortium's war room, staring at tactical displays that made no sense. How long have the humans been hiding this capability? Her military advisor, a being with tentacles instead of arms, studied the readings. According to these power signatures, centuries, maybe since they first joined the galactic community, they've been pretending to be weak, not pretending, planning. The Devourer fleet began using desperate tactics. They consumed their own damaged ships for resources. They attacked neutral systems, hoping to draw human forces away. Some tried to retreat to the galactic rim. None of it worked. Human pursuit. Ships caught the fleeing vessels and destroyed them with weapons that removed their targets from the timeline. The attacks on neutral systems were stopped by human forces that arrived before the Devourers did. Having somehow known about the attacks in advance, General Mi Young's intelligence network had infected the Devourer collective consciousness with something worse than viruses: doubt. For creatures that shared a hive mind, uncertainty was poison. They began questioning their own memories, their own purpose. "Admiral," Hive Prime broadcast, its voice no longer confident, "we offer terms. Withdraw your forces, and we will spare your species." "Counter-offer," Admiral De Hyon replied. "Surrender completely, and we'll consider making your extinction quick." "Extinction? We are the Devourers. We have consumed galaxies. We are eternal. Not anymore." The human fleet began Phase 3 operations. This wasn't about winning battles. This was about making sure the enemy could never threaten anyone again. Dr. Jae-min deployed his most terrible creation, a weapon that didn't kill enemies. It edited them out of reality retroactively, removing not just their present existence, but their entire history. Devourer ships began vanishing, and with them, all memory that they had ever existed. Captain Yoon-ji pushed the Ragnarok beyond safe limits, using experimental technology that frightened even her own crew. Her ship began firing pure impossibility, weapons that convinced reality to behave differently around their targets. The Devourer fleet was dying, but they weren't dying fast enough for Admiral De Hyon. He had studied their history. They had consumed entire civilizations. Billions of innocent beings had died to feed their hunger. Justice demanded something more than simple victory. "All ships, prepare for final protocol," he broadcast to his fleet. Even his own officers looked nervous. Final protocol meant using weapons that scared humans. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "are you sure? Once we cross that line, ... They ate children," Admiral De Hyon replied simply. "Entire species. Civilizations that could have contributed amazing things to the galaxy. They turned them into fuel for war machines." The human fleet moved into final attack positions. What happened next wasn't warfare. It was an act of cosmic surgery, removing a cancer from the universe. Vecmer watched in awe and terror as the humans deployed weapons that violated every natural law. Space itself began to rebel against the Devourer fleet. Time moved backward around enemy ships, unmaking them moment by moment. Reality rejected their existence, pushing them into dimensions where they couldn't survive. The final Devourer ship, carrying Hive Prime itself, tried one last desperate attack. It charged toward Earth, intent on taking humanity's home world with it. That never made it halfway. Captain Yoon-ji intercepted it with the Ragnarok. Her ship fired a weapon that deleted distance itself, placing the two vessels in the same space simultaneously. The resulting paradox destroyed the Devourer flagship completely while leaving the Ragnarok untouched. Hive Prime's last transmission was a whisper of disbelief. "What have you become?" Admiral De Hyon's answer was broadcast across the entire galaxy. "We became what the universe needed us to become." The war was over. The Devourers, a civilization that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia, no longer existed. But Admiral De Hyon wasn't finished. "All ships, prepare for deep space operations," he ordered. "We're pursuing the enemy to their home galaxy." His tactical officer looked shocked. "Sir, the threat is eliminated. Why continue?" Admiral De Hyon looked at the tactical display, showing the path the Devourers had taken to reach this galaxy. Somewhere out there was their home base, their breeding worlds, their construction facilities. Because, he said quietly, we're not fighting to win battles. We're fighting to make sure this never happens again. The human fleet disappeared into hyperspace, chasing an enemy across intergalactic distances. Behind them, the galaxy tried to understand what it had just witnessed. The quiet species that everyone had underestimated had just erased the most dangerous threat in known history, and they weren't done yet. 6 months had passed since the war ended. Vecmer stood in the rebuilt capital of his home world, watching Karathi children play in gardens that had been battlefields. The crystal being's light was bright again, but it flickered differently. Now, he had seen too much to ever be the same. The human fleet had returned 3 weeks ago. Not all of it. Some ships had stayed behind in the Devourer home galaxy, making sure nothing survived. The galaxy they had found was now empty space. Entire solar systems wiped clean. Even the stars had been extinguished. Captain Yoon-ji had explained it simply when she filed her report. We didn't just defeat them. We removed them from existence so completely that the universe forgot they ever lived. Now Vecmer was preparing for another journey. The Galactic Federation Council had called an emergency session. Every major species wanted answers. The quiet humans who had been ignored for centuries had just erased the galaxy's greatest threat. Everyone was afraid of what that meant. The council chamber looked different this time. Security was tighter. Representatives sat farther apart, and everyone watched the human section with nervous eyes. Ambassador Hyan Wu sat in the same chair he had occupied months ago, but everything about him seemed different now. Other delegates no longer saw a minor diplomat from a peaceful species. They saw the representative of something that could delete civilizations. Zithera of the Vel Consortium stood to address the chamber. Her purple skin looked pale, and her large black eyes couldn't hide her fear. We are here to discuss the human question, she announced. 6 months ago, humanity deployed military capabilities that were hidden from this council. Ships that violate galactic treaties, weapons that should not exist. We demand explanations. The chamber filled with supporting voices. Species that had refused to help the Karathi now wanted to know why humans had been hiding such power. Some demanded immediate disarmament. Others called for inspections of human space. Ambassador Hyan Wu listened quietly until the shouting died down. When he stood to speak, the chamber went silent. You want explanations, he said calmly. Here's one. While you were building fleets to fight each other, we were building fleets to fight things that could end civilization. While you ignored ancient threats, we studied them. While you argued about trade routes, we prepared for extinction level events. That doesn't justify hiding weapons of mass destruction, protested the Kef Empire's war leader. You violated dozens of galactic treaties. We saved the galaxy, Hyan Wu replied simply. Admiral De Hyan entered the chamber at that moment. He walked slowly, like someone carrying a heavy burden. Behind him came General Mi Young, Dr. Jae Min, and Captain Un-ji, the human military leadership that had ended the war. You want to know what we are? Admiral De Hyan said, addressing the entire council. We're the species that does what needs to be done. While you debated and made excuses, the Karathi were dying, so we acted. With weapons that could destroy. U.S. all, Zithara shot back. How do we know you won't use them against us? Dr. Jamin stepped forward. Because we've had these weapons for centuries, and we've never used them against galactic civilization. We built them to protect the galaxy, not conquer it. But you could, insisted the Altair Federation's admiral. Your fleet could defeat all of ours combined. Yes, General Mei-Hong said quietly. We could. The simple honesty of that statement sent chills through the chamber. No denials, no reassurances. Just the truth. Captain Yoon-ji spoke next. We didn't reveal our capabilities to threaten you. We revealed them because the galaxy faced extinction. If you prefer, we can dismantle our fleets and let you handle the next crisis yourselves." The chamber erupted in nervous voices. The next crisis. Everyone knew there would be one. There always was. Pirates, rogue AI, ancient weapons, sleeping gods. The galaxy was full of threats that required more than normal military force. "What do you want from us?" asked the Jorathi Trade Collective's representative, Admiral. Dehayan looked around the chamber at all, a species that had refused to help the Karathi. "We want you to remember this moment. Remember that when you asked for help, every major power in the galaxy turned away. Accept us. And what happens now? Zithara demanded. Now we go back to being the quiet species that fixes problems," General Mi Young replied. "We'll monitor threats you don't want to think about. We'll prepare for dangers you hope never come. And when the next extinction-level crisis appears, we'll be ready. Whether you help or not," added Captain EUN-G. The debate continued for hours. But everyone knew the outcome. The galaxy's power structure had changed permanently. Humanity wasn't asking for permission anymore. They were informing the Council of new realities. Some species tried to negotiate restrictions on human military development. Others offered alliance treaties in exchange for protection. A few quietly began developing their own secret weapons. Programs. All of it was too late. The humans had spent centuries building their advantage, while everyone else focused on immediate concerns. When the session ended, most delegates left quickly. They had reports to write and emergency meetings to schedule. The galaxy needed time to adjust to its new guardians. Vecmer approached Ambassador Hyan Wu as the chamber emptied. "Thank you," the crystal being said simply. "For saving my people." "You're welcome," Hyan Wu replied. "But understand, we didn't do it for gratitude. We did it because it needed doing." "I know. That's what makes it terrifying." Vecmer left the station and returned to Karathi space. His people were rebuilding their civilization, but they would never forget what they had witnessed. Children grew up hearing stories about the humans who saved them. Stories that carefully omitted certain details about how that salvation had been accomplished. Meanwhile, the human military quietly implemented new policies. General Mi Young established monitoring stations across the galaxy. Officially, they were research outposts. In reality, they watched for technological developments that might threaten galactic stability. Species that got too close to dangerous discoveries received visits from helpful human scientists offering alternative research directions. Admiral Dehayan created the Galactic Protection Fleet. On paper, it was a Federation organization. In practice, every ship was human-built and human-crewed. Other species could apply to join, but they had to meet standards that few could achieve. Dr. J. Mean returned to his research, but his new projects focused on preventive technologies. Weapons designed to stop galaxy-threatening civilizations before they became galaxy-threatening. Early detection systems for artificial intelligence uprisings. Containment protocols for ancient artifacts. Captain Yunji took the Ragnarok to the edge of known space. Her mission was simple: patrol the darkness between galaxies and watch for things that shouldn't exist. She had become humanity's early warning system against cosmic threats. Years passed. The galaxy adapted to its new reality. Trade continued. Colonies expanded. Wars were fought over territory and resources. But everyone knew that somewhere in the darkness, human ships were watching and waiting. Occasionally, threats emerged that reminded everyone why the humans maintained their vigil. A rogue AI here, an ancient weapon there, pirates with technology that violated natural law. Each crisis was handled quietly and efficiently by forces that officially didn't exist. The galaxy learned to live with its protectors. Some species resented the implied threat. Others were grateful for the security. Most simply tried not to think about it too much. Ambassador Hyan Wu continued his diplomatic work, but his role had changed. He wasn't negotiating anymore. He was informing other species about decisions that had already been made. When he spoke, everyone listened. One day, a young Karathi diplomat asked Thekmer about the war. "Elder, the humans saved us, but everyone seems afraid of them. Why?" Thekmer's crystal body dimmed as he remembered watching reality bend around human weapons. "Because, child, when the aliens asked for help, humans sent the most lethal fleet ever assembled, and they called it a rescue mission. The galaxy was safe. The price of that safety was the knowledge that humanity would do whatever was necessary to keep it that way. Some called them heroes. Others called them monsters. The humans didn't care about labels. They had become what the universe needed them to become. Nothing more. Nothing less. And in the dark spaces between stars, human ships continued their eternal watch, ready to end anything that threatened the peace they had bought with weapons that could unmake reality itself. The galaxy slept safely, guarded by nightmares that had chosen to protect instead of devour.